Hey, real quick before I get started here, for those of you who don't know me and just want to jump right to some of the gear that I'm talking about in this video, there are timestamp links in the description below so you can get right to whatever you're interested in hearing about. So I am back from the week-long Oregon backcountry adventure with Jason of Primal Outdoors. If you haven't already seen it, there is a quick 1-minute trailer sort of giving you an overview of the whole week, so be sure to check that out. I'm still sorting through a ton of footage, getting everything organized and figured out how these episodes are going to come together. I do hope to have the first episode out for you next week, Saturday, November 21st. This week I want to quickly go over a few sort of surprise all-stars from the trip. I recently did a video where I talked about a bunch of different gear that I use for overlanding. That video was maybe a little more warm weather, summer oriented. I didn't think about some of the stuff that I use in the winter. We definitely encountered a wide variety of weather conditions over the course of the week and over the various elevations that we hit. So I wanted to take a moment to go over some of the gear that surprised me with how useful it ended up being on this trip. And I'm not trying to sell you any of this stuff. I don't care if you buy it or not. I don't gain anything if you buy any of this stuff. I mean, if you click on one of my Amazon links and eventually buy something, I may receive a small commission. It doesn't even matter if you buy the thing that I linked you to or not. This is just purely to share with you some information about stuff that I've been really happy with how it's worked out. Well, it's the final day of my week-long adventure through the Oregon backcountry, and I'm happy to report that the old Czech Army backpack worked out fabulously for handling garbage. I've got an entire week's worth of garbage in there, and that includes some stuff that I picked up along the way. A number of you commented on the original video I made about this, concerned that rain would get into the backpack. When I made that video, the bag was more or less empty and I just slapped it on there without really paying attention. As you can see, these flaps do come up over the opening quite well. On this trip, I've been out in rain and snow and not had anything get inside. So it does work just fine for keeping the weather out. I will say, if you're considering a solution like this for your car that has no spare tire, you truly need to not be concerned about your paint. Now, this car has been scratched and battered, and the paint is not really my concern. My concern is the car getting me to where I want it to go. What happens on a dusty trail is that dirt can get up and behind here, and just the dirt itself can end up scuffing the paint, or at least the clear coat of the paint. I'm sure it'll probably buff out, but that is a consideration. All in all, however, I am really happy with how this worked out. It has made handling garbage so much easier. On top of that, on this trip, my roof box ended up really full. I was carrying firewood, of course I had my chair, and I would put my tent rain fly and my awning tarp up in the roof box rather than packing them all up wet into their bags. So my roof box has been really full. I would have had no room for garbage. Now that I'm about to get on the highway and head home, I am gonna take the garbage bag out and put it in my roof box. I got plenty of space up there now. We burned the wood, my tarps are all packed away, and I'm just gonna stash this back in the car. Also, I'm happy to report an entire week out in the wilderness, not a single animal messed around with my garbage. So another surprising all-star of this trip are these Rooster boots. Now, these got sent to me back in the summer, and I made a video about work boots in general and my initial impressions of these boots, but I didn't really have an opportunity to put them to the test. I hadn't really used the boots very much since last summer, but I decided to take sort of a chance on them with this trip, and it's the only footwear I brought for the entire trip. It turned out to be a really good choice. They're waterproof, and they kept my feet warm and dry through all the conditions we encountered, including some cold rain, which turned into snow, tromping through inches and inches of snow at 6,000, 6,500 feet. My feet were often the warmest part of my body. The boots they're my size. They're the right size for me, but they're They're on the spacious side inside. That gives me the room to wear a thick wool sock without my foot being constricted at all. And so there's just enough space in there to build up a little pocket of heat. And my feet have been probably the most comfortable that they've ever been on a winter trip. So I talked about this in one of the early episodes of the series. It has turned out to be much more than just a silly little gadget. And we're on the high desert, and it is very, very cold tonight. I'm really happy that I received this thing. This is a USB rechargeable hand warmer, and it is made by Ocoopa. Oh, that feels good already. I use this thing every single night, and I only had to recharge it once over the course of the trip. Occasionally in the evening, I would use it to warm my fingers, but for the most part we had campfires. I was able to stay warm until getting in the tent with the heater. But where this really proved useful was I would turn it on and stick it down in the bottom of my sleeping bag, which is the one spot where it's really hard to warm up, to get the body heat to warm up down there. And with the end of the sleeping bag right at the edge of the tent, it's a particularly cold spot. With this thing down at my feet, oh my gosh, I could sleep with no socks on. I was so comfortable. I could usually just put it down there for the first couple of hours, and then I would be warm enough and I would take it out of there. It was frigid here last night, well down into the 20s, and I went ahead and ran the thing all night, and I haven't even shut it off yet. I've been using it this morning too to keep my fingers warm. This is not just a silly gadget. This was a fantastic little piece of gear to have on a winter overlanding trip.
I'm not gonna lie, I would not be able to tolerate the long, dark, cold winter nights in my tent on the high desert without my Mr. Heater Buddy. This thing works so incredibly well. I got mine on sale at a deep discount, but even at full price, worth it. The Mr. Heater Buddy provides a surprising duration of heat off a single propane canister, and the low setting is largely adequate to keep my Gazelle T3 cozy warm. I generally just run it a short while in the evening to warm up the tent before changing for bed, and for a short while in the morning to make the tent cozy and comfortable before getting dressed for the day. It makes such a difference to get through these transitions without getting chilled.
Jackery obviously is a sponsor of the channel, and thanks to their support I am able to get out on these trips like this. But I've accepted this partnership because this is a product that I truly like and I truly use every single day on every trip that I take.
The Jackery even ended up saving the day at one moment on this trip.
Oh man, there are a lot of sharp, spiky rocks on this road. Sometimes I get a snide comment on one of my videos saying that it's pointless to put a KO2 on a Subaru. Putting KO2s on a Subaru is like putting a turbo on a Prius. But I tell you what, these tires have performed fantastically. This entire trip, we were in sand and dirt and mud and snow, climbing over rocks. When I am out in the middle of absolutely bleeping nowhere, I want the toughest freaking tires I can get in this size. I've been running the KO2s for 2.5 years now, all over the state of Oregon, all kinds of terrain, and they have served me very, very well. They were 100% worth the money. Simply put, there is no tire that is better suited to taking on this kind of terrain that's available in a size that will fit my Subaru. I have no regrets about putting these tires on this car. When these are worn out and it's time to replace them, I'll probably put the same thing back on again.
The reality is that things don't always go according to plan, and sometimes you just can't avoid being on the trail after dark, especially in winter when the sun sets so early. My Diode Dynamics SS3 pods simply get the job done driving down the trail at night. And while I was too busy to get any footage of it, the new Diode Dynamics C2 mini pods I've mounted on the rear were extremely useful for getting situated at campsites after dark. Compared to the big name brands often seen on off-road builds, Diode Dynamics pods are surprisingly affordable, while reportedly outputting more light than those expensive name brands. Every time I find myself on the trail after dark, I'm thankful for my Diode Dynamics pods lighting the way. Alright, I hope you found that helpful or interesting in some way. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned next week for the first episode of our epic adventure across the Oregon backcountry.